I'm Natasha Kirchek, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Christmas festivities take over Israel. Guatemala announces plans to move its embassy to Jerusalem, and an Israeli high schooler has just saved Facebook and WhatsApp from a major security breach. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Christmas festivities are in full swing here in the Holy Land. As usual, tourists have arrived in droves to visit some of the holiest Christian sites in the world. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is already thinking ahead to next year, and he's just offered to take pilgrims on a personalized tour of Jerusalem in 2018.
So now I have a proposition for all our Christian friends. I'm going to take next year in Christmas, for those of you who come to Israel, I'm going to take a guided tour. In fact, I'll be your guide on this guided tour. And think of all the places you can walk. You can go to the Jesus boat in the Sea of Galilee. You can get to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre right behind me. Any places that you want to visit in the footsteps of Jesus and the origin of our Judeo-Christian heritage. So please come to Israel next year in Jerusalem, and Merry Christmas to all of you.
As per tradition, Jerusalem's Latin Patriarch Pier Battista Pizzaballa has arrived in the West Bank city of Bethlehem as well. The Latin Patriarch's march through Bethlehem was met with the typical Christmas fanfare as he entered the Holy Nativity Church to lead the midnight and morning Christmas Mass. Unfortunately, another Christmas tradition is a clashing of Palestinians and Israeli troops in Bethlehem, but tourists still flock to the city anyway to be near the place where Jesus is believed to have been born. And it looks like nothing slows down Christmas spirit. All right, well, following the United States' example, Guatemala has just announced that it will follow suit and move its foreign embassy from Herzliya to Jerusalem. Israeli leaders have praised the news, saying that it takes immense guts for a small country like Guatemala to stand up for justice like this. Relations have been warming between Israel and Latin America over the years. We saw that reflected in the UN vote at the General Assembly earlier this week. Though the resolution denouncing President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital was passed with a crushing majority, the countries that sided with Israel says a lot about Israel's growing foreign relations. After Trump first made the announcement, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu predicted more countries would follow that example soon. Looks like Guatemala is the first. On the heels of that UN vote, which saw 128 countries voting against President Trump's decision, the United Nations has just announced it has slashed its yearly budget by $285 million. The U.S. has applauded this as a step in the right direction, which makes sense considering the United States is the single largest contributor to the international body. Joining us now in the studio to take a closer look at all the recent activity going on at the United Nations is former Israeli ambassador to multiple countries, Ambassador Yosef Livne, and Ambassador Dani Ayalon, who is the former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this vote. How should Israel view the 128 nation gang up on Israel, per se, at the UN General Assembly last week?
Well, there's nothing new. You know, we have been used to this Arab automatic majority ganging up on us. All you can look at is Ambassador Haley, who is appalled by this discrimination, by the injustice, by the indecency. So for us, it's a game which we cannot win.
Were there any countries that stood out for having chosen to support the resolution, and any countries that stood out for having chosen not to support the solution in your minds?
Well, I think that what we always, we can fight is the difference, is the score. You know, if we have seen resolutions of 180 against 2, U.S. and Israel in different resolutions, here we see 128 against, 9 and 35 abstentions, and a few who did not even show up. So, but I attribute this to the pressure, to the American pressure. So instead of seeing 150 against us, we saw 128. If this is it's not a qualitative change, it's a little bit quantitative. and not much beyond that.
I think that we should look at the positive side. Countries like Mexico, and I remember I was ambassador to Mexico, and I don't remember Mexico voting favorably over the years.
Right.
And here, at this instance, on something which is really important, they chose to abstain. Argentina chose to abstain. And of course, you have countries like Guatemala, which voted against the draft
Guatemala
resolution.
obviously has just said that they're even going to be moving their embassy to Jerusalem.
Yes. So I think on the whole, the who voted what makes a difference.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about, the fact that Israel is now going to leave UNESCO as it had promised earlier this year, following the United States as well. What is the significance and the possible consequences of doing so?
Well, it's just going to show that Israel is not going to be the, the one who is, the punching bag. And from UNESCO, we have not actually received not only any dignity but a real injustice, where they call Jerusalem as a Palestinian state, where they called Hebron and the Patriarch's Cave as Palestinian, and all those things. So for us, it's just a matter of showing that there is a consequence. And I believe it was easier for us to do it following the American decision to leave.
Well, and the U.S. has also made another decision as well, right, which is to cut $285 million from the UN core budget contributions, which is a pretty significant number. This is money that's going to be affecting the UN peacekeeping budget as well. Is this childish behavior, or is this a wise move?
No, I think the Americans have taken similar steps in the past. I would like to remind that President Reagan chose to leave UNESCO when the U.S. felt that UNESCO was mistreating Israel. And they decided to leave. And back then, they told us, don't follow us, because we can always come back. You can't be sure they'll let you back.
Right.
And they left and came back a few years later. So I don't think it's childish. And you don't have many sanctions, especially a superpower like the United States or any other superpower. But the United States, which foots the bill on a yearly basis, and their contribution to the budget of the United Nations is so huge that if they decide that they're going to curtail that contribution, it'll make a difference. It is not a childish act by any means.
Well, but what does that mean for the United States and its international standing as well? It's a very controversial move,
it means
right?
that the United States is starting to just throw its weight around and use its leverage. So far, it has been, receiving and on the receiving side, and now they're going to show, and this is actually one of the platforms on which President Trump was running, making America great again. And here I can tell you that also he is really very comfortable with that, because his base is very supportive of this. You have to remember.
Well, yeah,
Natasha,
I mean, he doesn't seem to be scared about this move whatsoever. And
no, but also I think he's walking here on a very firm ground, because the sentiment vis-a-vis the United Nations in the United States is very, very negative.
Yeah.
The sovereignty issue. So in that case, I think he will have a lot of support, even from Democrats.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, ambassadors. And we are going to have to wait and see what 2018 looks like for the United Nations without as much American and Israeli support. All right. Pop sensation Lorde has just made a shocking and heartbreaking reversal. The singer-songwriter, who dreamed of being royal, has announced that after backlash from fans urging her to boycott Israel, she's decided to cancel her upcoming show in Tel Aviv. This is certainly a crushing disappointment to Israeli fans who already bought their tickets for next summer's concert. Lorde has issued a statement saying that despite earlier research into the matter, she now felt not too proud to admit that she didn't make the right call on this one. Anti-Israel protesters immediately pressured Lorde to cancel her show and caved to BDS within hours of the announcement. The Jewish activist who led the charge says she's actually shocked at just how well the campaign worked. though BDS supporters say artists performing in Israel are indirectly supporting the Israeli government, musicians like Tom York of Radiohead argue that a cultural boycott actually harms the peace process. Israel's culture minister has begged Lord to be the true heroine and reconsider the concert, but for now it looks like Israelis will have to find a different dance partner this summer. It's been an especially turbulent few months recently in the Palestinian world. Israel's Shin Bet security is warning that a major shakeup could be in the works and that Hamas might very well be preparing to seize control of the West Bank. Joining us now is ILTV's Brett Allen Smith with more on this.
Thanks, Tasha. Well, things have definitely been pretty unstable between Hamas and the PA even before Trump's speech on Jerusalem. The head of the Shin Bet now believes that the ongoing Palestinian unity efforts are likely to fail, if not very likely to fail, which would create a potentially violent rift in the Palestinian world. Now, the Shin Bet says that Hamas is intentionally stirring chaos in the West Bank with terror attacks because PA President Mahmoud Abbas is particularly weak right now, and if the cards fall a certain way, we could very well be looking at a West Bank controlled by Hamas in the foreseeable future.
Now, obviously, that would be a very dangerous security situation for Israel, and considering that this is, coming from the man who runs the Shin Bet, obviously, it's a real possibility too.
No, I think you're totally right. I mean, the Shin Bet broke up almost 150 Hamas cells in the West Bank this year, and that's a very high number for a group that's centralized in the Gaza Strip. So clearly, their efforts in Gaza haven't exactly paid off like they were hoping. Israel's actually about 90% finished building its new underground barrier, which would completely cut off terror tunnels from Gaza. So Hamas might really be searching for a new mode of operation right about now, as you'll see in the rest of my report. The completion of Israel's high-tech underground barrier will be a hard-earned accomplishment once finished in 2019, one that's already proven highly effective in detecting and eliminating tunnels designed to funnel terror from Gaza Strip into Israeli territory. The barrier's sensory technology actually discovered 2 such terror tunnels in recent months. The IDF demolished the first this past October and the second earlier this month. The Shin Bet believes this tool may already be deterring Hamas from pursuing more cross-border tunnels and refocusing them on an underground web within the Strip instead. But this, coupled with the terror group's potential to overthrow current Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank, puts Hamas in what could be a deadly position. Confidence for Abbas has been dwindling, especially in the wake of President Trump's decision to officially recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And with Palestinians becoming increasingly desperate for a change, the terror group may very well find a way to seize that fear, a move that would throw the region into a new era destined for conflict.
Well, we all know Israeli security is working around the clock to prevent deadly terror attacks every day, but now we know just how effective that work is. The Shin Bet has just told the Knesset that security forces were able to stop over 400 terror attacks this year, in addition to nearly 1,100 lone wolf-style attacks. Last year, the Shin Bet thwarted only 400 lone wolf attacks, which means that although the rate of attacks is skyrocketing, Israeli security is up for the task. Roughly the same number of organized terror attacks happened last year versus this year, but last year, over 100 of those attacks were successfully carried out versus 54 that were carried out this year. So clearly, this is a massive improvement. The Shin Bet's counter-terror units have found that using social media is an effective way to target and deter potential terrorists, sometimes with arrests, other times with simply a serious talking to. These are encouraging statistics for sure, but Shin Bet officials warn not to interpret any perceived calm as a sign of actual peace. Experts say terrorists are tirelessly plotting attacks, even if things seem quiet on the surface. Now, this is a shocking story. A 17-year-old has just shot and killed his girlfriend's parents in their home in Reston, Virginia. And it's all because they'd forbidden their daughter from dating him after learning that he was an outspoken neo-Nazi. The 2 victims, Scott Fricker and Buckler Kuhn Fricker, first saw red flags when their daughter told them how great her boyfriend was at history. She then allegedly informed them, "Did you know that Jews are partly to blame for World War II?" The parents investigated and found disturbing social media posts connected to the boyfriend, praising Hitler, supporting Nazi book burning, and spouting other anti-Semitic rhetoric. Not wanting their daughter to be associated with such hate, they reported the boy to the school's principal and eventually convinced their daughter to break up with him. But that very next morning, the parents found him in their daughter's room, where police say he shot and killed the couple and then shot himself in the head. The 17-year-old minor is alive but is in serious condition, and he's just been charged with both killings. All right, now stay tuned for a word from our sponsor.
Paris, Brussels, London, Jerusalem. Istanbul, Manhattan. Barely a day passes by without the news reporting another terrorist attack against innocent targets. The scourge of terrorism is spread to virtually every corner of the globe. Money is the oxygen that allows terrorism to continue. Shirat Hadin, the Israel Law Center, is utilizing the courts to stop the flow of funds to the terrorist groups. We work with law enforcement agencies worldwide. You can help empower the victims and their families in their struggle for justice. Your tax-deductible contribution will enable us to continue our financial warfare against the extremists who target innocent civilians. With every $50 donation or more, you'll receive a free copy of Harpoon, the new national bestseller by Shirat Hadin's president, Nitzana Darshan-Leitner. Call 1-888-SHIRAT-HADIN or go online to donate.
Now, here's some exciting news. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just announced that Israel will be boosting the benefits for disabled Israelis by 1.5 billion shekels. Not too shabby, right? Well, ILTV's Aaron Porras has the details. Now, Aaron, break this down for us. What does it mean?
So this is an important first step in getting this new budget passed, but unfortunately, in and of itself, it really doesn't mean a whole lot. It still has a long ways to go before anything is set in stone or passed or enacted, etc. But again, you know, at least something is being done to answer these protesters who have been on the streets for so long.
Right. So what else needs to happen before it does become law?
I'll tell you that right now in my report.
The agreement now just has to be accepted either by the Knesset Finance Committee or passed as law in the plenum. If finalized, 1.5 billion shekels, or about $430 million, would then be added to the pool of financial subsidies paying out to roughly 200,000 citizens. The added payments, which comprise of the first step in several raises, could take effect as soon as January 1st. Netanyahu calls the proposal, quote, a big step and a real consideration for a needy population that is deserving of this aid, end quote. According to media reports, Finance Ministry officials are already writing a bill to push in the plenum floor to establish the incremental raises as law. All that is left to do now is wait for the results of the 3 Knesset votes, the first of which is set to take place later today.
Paying bills, talking to friends, listening to music, so much of our daily routine has become digital nowadays. Well, it looks like Israel is now considering yet another major step into the digital revolution by cutting back on cash and converting money into a digital shekel. Digital cryptocurrency is already a reality, but unlike global currencies like Bitcoin sold by private companies, this digital shekel would be distributed by Israeli banks directly from the country's finance ministry, just like cash is today. The digital cash would potentially come in the form of codes which you would use to pay for goods and services, made as cellular payments. Now, there are obviously a few kinks to work out in the system, such as figuring out how your digital wallet would work and, of course, cybersecurity. That's why this plan is at least another year or two away, but the government believes cybercash could save the country literally billions of dollars, since cash is typically how the tax evaders get away without paying their taxes. Nearly a quarter of Israel's economy actually operates in this black economy gray zone of cash. So even though it's convenient, we may be saying bye-bye to bills in the not-too-distant future. Well, teenagers may be a big pain in the butt, but Facebook is now willing to put up with anything from one Israeli high schooler. 17-year-old Yuval Sprints was working on a software project involving the instant messenger app WhatsApp, and he got so involved in the coding that he accidentally stumbled across a major security breach in the software. He then brought it to the attention of the parent company, Facebook. Web security experts at Facebook quickly realized that Sprints had just exposed what could have been a devastating security breach in their system. The bug allowed fake numbers to be added to certain group chats in WhatsApp, which, if exploited, could actually allow regular users to add whatever numbers they wanted to into a closed group. Sprints found the breach purely by accident while working on a personal project to try and merge 2 WhatsApp groups into one. He's only 17, but this gifted youngster is already making waves with some of the biggest internet companies on the planet. Facebook immediately isolated and fixed the bug, awarding Sprints a cash reward of $1,250. And what does he plan to use the money on? Well, a computer, obviously. Well, my next guest is an amazing Israeli artist who studied glass working techniques for years in the United States and now uses his incredible skills to bring sculptures to life. Emmanuel Zohar, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, so tell me first about your art. Describe your style a little bit.
you can call it in one name, stained glass, and I just go, all the things that I do goes out from that profession that I'm telling, that art that I'm telling you.
So out of the box.
Stained glass is not just windows or lamps. It's glass and it's very wide. You can look to the right, to the left, and you can use it for all kind of different things.
Very interesting. So what material you're using? Glass. This is
glass and thin, sometimes bronze and alpaca,
bronze.
all kind of metals.
Okay, very cool. Wow, this is beautiful. So I understand your latest series is focusing on frogs. What inspired you to focus on frogs?
When in my childhood, I just read the Grimm's brother book about the story that everybody knows, and in my mind and with imagination, I just had to go and meet him somewhere in the forest and tell him, don't wait for her anymore. After 250 years, she didn't show up, so forget about it.
To give the frog a kiss.
Collect all the frogs from all over the world and swarms and build your own kingdom and tell them what you know. You are a prince. And you know cars, you know love, you know music, you know everything. And tell the human being that you can tell them how to make good life. I mean, it's a kind of an utopia.
Yeah,
in his kingdom, he said, I don't want to have no police, no crime, no wars, no nothing. Let the people know that there is a place if they want to see.
Well, I mean this. And there's something humorous about the work that you're doing as well,
humor.
Right? Yeah.
You look at me and you see a white bird. I have a childish mind, and that's the point.
Yeah, right.
I can look at it
well,
from
looks
another...
looks can deceive, which is the point of these sculptures,
yes.
right? So where are your works on display right now?
I tell my stories through the frogs and the ants.
Absolutely. Yes. And so where can we see this work? Is it on display?
In my gallery in Haifa. I have a gallery in Haifa, in a studio in Tivon. And also we can see it at my shop in Etsy, etsy.com, Emmanuel Zohar, and also in Amazon.
On Amazon.
It's going to be too, yes.
All right,
Amazon.com.
well, Emmanuel, thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate it very much.
Rumors are still buzzing about who will be the lucky designer that gets to create soon-to-be royal Meghan Markle's wedding dress. Earlier this month, we reported on an Israeli designer that may make the cut, and now there's some even more exciting news, but I'll leave it to ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh to share.
Thanks, Natasha. Well, it must be stressful to decide who's going to design your wedding dress, especially if you're Meghan Markle, who is going to have millions of people watching her on her big day. But rumor has it for a few weeks now that Meghan Markle may in fact be wearing an original design made by Israeli Inbal Dror. And now Inbal Dror has just confirmed that she actually sent some sketches over to the royal family. The bar is definitely set high for fellow Israeli designers, and I have more details about the dress in my report.
Israeli wedding designer Dror was reportedly approached to submit sketches for Meghan Markle since she's designed dresses for many celebrities in the past, including Beyonce and the daughter-in-law of U.S. President Donald Trump. However, things may be taking a turn for the worse since sketches that Inbal Dror made of 3 wedding gowns were leaked on TMZ the morning of December 19th. Now, this may have just decreased the likelihood of Dror being picked to design the soon-to-be princess's dress, since the designers of both Kate Middleton and Princess Diana's dresses were not announced until just a week or 2 before the wedding. In fact, 0 information was leaked about the dresses themselves until the actual day of the ceremony. Inbal Dror's publicist told the Times of Israel that the sketches leaked were only preliminary and were not distributed by the designer or her team. So let's just hope this doesn't ruin her chances, because hey, it would be kinda awesome to see Meghan Markle walking down the aisle in an Israeli original, no?
And now for our Hebrew word of the day, it's Christmas Day, which means today's word is Chag HaMolad, which means Christmas in Hebrew. Now, the literal translation of the word is the holiday of the birth, since Chag means holiday and HaMolad means the birth. Makes sense, right? Since Christmas is an annual festival commemorating the birth of Jesus Christ. Well, here in Israel, Christian pilgrims from around the world have made their way to Bethlehem to celebrate at what is believed to be his birthplace, Bethlehem. After all, Israel is home to the 3 monotheistic religions, so celebrating Chag HaMolad is part and parcel. And on that note, Merry Chag HaMolad, my friends. We hope you have a wonderful day. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be cloudy with a sharp drop in temperatures. and scattered showers in the north. The low will be about 48 or 9 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, on the other hand, should be partly cloudy with a significant rise in temperatures, and the high is expected to be around 70 or 21 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.48 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.